So the idea of this video is, presumably any of us using a modeler will have encountered that high-end fizz tone, sort of the stuff that feels like it's unnatural, the high-end fizz that kind of sounds pretty unpleasant and digital. Now, what I've found is that actually if you put your ear near a real amp, or even using analogue pedals, it's not actually a digital thing that's happening, it's something else. Something about the way that distortion can occur, or clipping, whatever you want to call it, on that higher end can sound quite harsh to the ears. The thing with a real amp is that we don't normally sit within a proximity of the speaker where we get it in our ears much, but if you put a mic in front of an amp and listen in headphones, you can start to hear that thing occurring. Or if you get a really bright amp like a Vox AC30, you can hear it quite clearly. But the idea was, since it's kind of a naturally occurring thing when we involve gain and speakers and all that stuff, I wanted to see if there was a way to, aside from high cuts and low cuts, which I know I can take advantage of in the HX STOMP, what happens if I get to a gig and I'm using something like the Origin Effects RevivalDrive, where I can't really tone shape in such a simple way, or if I'm using the CabZeus simulator, which doesn't have a high or low cut on it. Are there other strategies that I can employ? So first of all, actually I should also say that the HRM J-Rocket has a really useful sweep on the treble knob, which is one of those kind of lifesavers if you do find that you've got this fizzy thing happening. So let's just try and create the fizz. So if I turn off the reverb delay, I'm not quite sure why I'm having trouble making it sound fizzy. It's awkward. Interesting. So the solution is get a J-Rocket pedal. Right, well. The issue being that I'm setting settings on the HRM which would normally sound dodgy through other stuff. Right, I'm going to change pedals over so that I can get something of a worse sound. Right, that'll do it. So this is a Boss DS1 with the distortion set at about 930. The tone is just less than halfway and the level's at about 1:30, 2 o'clock. So you hear there's quite a lot of that nasty. fizzy stuff on it. So one of the first things that I would suggest doing is to increase the mids, because those are where the more pleasant guitar related frequencies sit. The next thing I might consider doing is reducing the presence, but that's already low. So I'll next go to the treble and bring that down to 5. I'm on the litigator patch normally, which sounds quite round and smooth. Let's see what other settings we've got. So I've set the treble lower and I've set the mids higher. See what happens. So without a high cut, again that sound. So here's what I did find when I was using the Origin Effects and the CabZeus. The less gain you have on the thing, the more round the sound seems to become, and less of that fizzy stuff. So I'm moving the drive right down to 0.9 at the moment. So I've obviously lost a lot of level there. So what can I do? Boost the channel volume. And I could boost the level at the end of the chain. I'm going to take the drive even lower. Go back to boosting again. So we're at about plus 10 dB now on the output. Still, to be honest, isn't sounding great, is it? So I'm boosting the mids even more. Treble I'm going to take down to 3 o'clock and see what happens. 2 o'clock. So treble now is down to 1.5. Treble all the way off. I'm going to chuck the delay and reverb on, see if this... So, although that's, I think, better than it was, I'm going to turn the treble back up to where it was before and show you the difference. So that has tamed off a lot of that high-end content. The DS1 is chucking loads in front of the HX STOMP. I still don't think it's necessarily a pleasant tone, so what I'm going to try doing now is adding an EQ block, which is new territory actually. I've never done this before on the HX STOMP. So we're going to go mono and I guess, should we start with a Mezza style 5-way graphic, and I'm gonna just move that, if I can remember how. Not that, is it? Action, that's the one. So, and what I'm going to do is reduce the 6600 kilohertz slider down by -2.6. Touch more. So -3.2 dB. If I take this down to like -6, and then boost the overall level again. A little bit better. What else can we try? I'm going to add in a bit more treble again now that we've reduced that. So this is treble at 1. Here's the EQ block off. That sounds worse. Is it on? Let's try another EQ style. So I'm going to go for simple EQ and go for the high gain and turn that down -6.4. I'm trying to stay away from low and high cut. Let's go for parametric first and right the way across to 8 kilohertz. I'm going to turn this frequency down 10 dB to start with. Here's without. Here's on. Could even move that high frequency down to 6 kilohertz. So the EQ after the amp block helps. I guess I could try putting the drive back up now and see if it can cope with more drive with an EQ. Things are quite loud now, so I'm gonna with the EQ off. EQ after an amp block can help to tame some of this. Keeping the gain lower on the amp, or the drive, sorry, will help. Keeping the mids higher will help. Keeping the treble lower and the presence lower will help to tame off some of this brightness. But ultimately, I think if you're having trouble with a tone sounding kind of fizzy, the best route to avoiding that fizz is an EQ block or a cab high cut, if you've got access to those. But those are just some of the things that I'd recommend trying. Obviously, if you end up using a device like the RevivalDrive Compact or a real amp, you don't necessarily have some of these options that are in the HX STOMP, which give a really kind of powerful tone shaping. So those are some of the suggestions that I'd suggest. Boost mids, cut treble, keep presence low. So presence and treble, presence is kind of that higher end pass treble, so you can kind of use a mix of those to get a balance. So you could have the presence low and then to compensate have the treble a bit higher, or you could have the treble lower and then compensate by having the presence a bit higher. There's kind of a relationship there. Keep the mids high, but ultimately if you're still concerned with that fizz, EQ is probably your next best bet to shape some of that high end off. These are options aside from the cab high cut and low cut. The cab high cut is the one that I've gone to first. It's kind of simple and easy to use, and is always on anyway, so it doesn't use up an EQ block, a block on the HX STOMP. So that's kind of the benefit of that. But with the CabZeus, it's not so much of an issue, as I freed up 2 of my usual blocks by putting the cabs on here. So hopefully that's slightly useful.